Hello and welcome to the lesson today on linear inequalities and their graphs. This covers topics in the standard 2.3a and 2.3b, and it's the questions under the study island topic, linear inequalities and graphs. So there's a lot of information underneath those topics, so I went ahead and broke this into two videos. So there's going to be a part 1 and a part 2. And in this part, we are going to be talking about solving inequalities with one variable and then graphing their answers. So as always, as you're going through this video, remember our study tips. You should be taking notes in your math notebook. And if I go too fast and you're taking notes, go ahead and just press pause and then pick up when you're ready to finish. And then you can always press pause, rewind, fast forward. You can even press pause at the beginning of an example and see how you do, and then watch the video to check yourself, and that way you can be getting a gauge at how well you're doing. So I'm excited that you're here, and let's go ahead and take a few notes.
First of all, inequalities are less than and greater than. So our less than symbol looks like this, and it's actually, if you take an L and smush it over, that makes your less than symbol. So they open the same way. So that's kind of handy way to remember if you ever need to double check yourself. And then you have a greater than. And you can also have a less than or equal to or a greater than and equal to. So when we're solving basically equations that instead of having an equal sign, they have an inequality sign, they're solved the exact same way, except for when you multiply and divide both sides by a negative number, the inequality flips. So if you started with a greater than, it will flip to the less than, and if you started with the less than, it flips to the greater than. So when you are graphing these answers, you're going to use a closed dot for the less than and equal to and the greater than and equal to. And you're going to use an open dot for less than and greater than. So let's go ahead and look at some examples. So in this first example, it's a one-step equation. It just has the fraction multiplied t. But when I'm doing a fraction multiplication, instead of dividing, I like to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So here, the reciprocal means you flip the fraction and keep the sign. So I'm going to be multiplying both sides by negative 9 over 8. And the reason I do that is because this cancels out to just a single 1. And so that leaves me just a single t. However, I multiplied both sides by a negative number while I was solving. So that's going to flip the inequality to a greater than or equal to sign. And then 56 times negative 9 over 8 is negative 63, which in Algebra 1 you can use a calculator with a fraction button to help you with that or help check it if you need that. So my answer here is going to be A. All right, so in this one, I have to, because I have this 5z minus 17 in the top, before I can deal with any of that, I need to get rid of this bottom, the denominator. So to do that, it's dividing by negative 5 there. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 5 to undo that fraction bar, which means division. Now I multiplied both sides by a negative number, so my inequality is going to flip from a less than to a greater than. These cancel, and I'm just left with 5z minus 17 on the left side, and then positive 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. Now it's a two-step equation, so I'm going to add 17 to both sides first. It's the term without a variable. So these cancel out, and I'm left with 5z is greater than, and then negative 25 plus 17 is negative 8. And then my last step is to undo that multiplication between 5z and z by dividing both sides by 5. And then z is greater than the negative 8 over 5 doesn't simplify anymore. So my answer here is going to be D. Now here's an equation to solve, but this one has two x terms. So I'm going to want to get those x terms together. So I can move the 5x over, but then that's going to leave me with nothing over here. So it makes more sense to move the 2x over to the 5x. So that 2x is being added to both sides. To undo that division, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. 5x minus 2x is 3x, is less than negative 2. It's because these 2x minus 2x cancels each other out. So now I have a 3 times x. I'm trying to get that x completely by itself. So to undo that multiplication, I'm going to divide both sides by positive 3. Because it's a positive number, these 3's cancel still, but my inequality is going to stay the same. And then negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4, which is letter A. So in this problem here, they give us the graph and ask us to match which inequality this is. Well, first of all, this is an open dot, so that means it's just going to be less than or greater than. So no equal to part. So I can instantly get rid of B and D because of this line at the underneath. It would have to be a closed dot to have an equal to part. So here it's numbers 5 and down. So it's going to be less than 5. Because I'm dealing with all numbers 5, less than 5. This problem here, it says which number line represents the solution to the inequality below. So first, it wants the solution, so I'm going to have to solve this first. So I'm going to go ahead and just write it down here so I have room to solve it all the way. So it's a two-step equation. So my first step is to move the part that doesn't have the x. So it's going to add 5. The opposite of adding 5 to both sides is subtract 5. And that leaves us with 2x on the left. And then 7 minus 5 is 2. And then if you divide both those 2's by 2, to undo the 2 in front of the 2x, to undo that multiplication, these 2's cancel, and I'm left with x is greater than, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So this is my solution, so I need to find a graph that matches to that. So here it's going to be an open dot because it doesn't have the equal to part. So I know instantly I can get rid of B and D with their closed dots. So I'm looking for something that says all answers above 1. So here it's going to be letter A because the open dot is above 1, whereas C, the open dot is above negative 1. So this graph here shows all numbers between two numbers, negative 3 and 0. In math, the way that we show between is a variable with less than symbols on both sides. And you could have less than or equal to on one side, or you could have it on both sides. That's all acceptable. But here, because this problem has open dots above both numbers, I know it's just going to be the less than symbols. And here it's between negative 3 and 0. So that means those are my numbers on the end. And my 0. So that means my answer here is going to be A. So this one here is very similar. It's going to be the x and it's in between two numbers. However, my 3 here has a closed dot, so that means I'm going to have an equal to part on the left. And my 6 has an open dot, so it's just going to be less than on the right. So it's between 3 and 6. So those are going to be my two numbers. And my answer is going to be B. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you learned something new.